Okay, so we're currently living in times where Canadian citizens living in the US are coming home, or even US citizens are starting to migrate elsewhere. The commonality is that things are becoming way too unstable in the US, and some residents have said they've had enough. I've interviewed Canadian and US citizens who have already left the US, or were planning to, or in the process. But today, I have an update from the very first interview that I have ever done on a Canadian citizen previously living in Arizona and who has now come back home to Canada. So I'm going to share his journey back to Canada with you and also share some more perspective that he's had since the last time we spoke. The backdrop you're looking at today comes from my mom, and I believe she took this in Banff last year. I think it's Bow River, Banff, which is why I have a question mark, because I'm not 100% sure. She actually never told me where this is from. Maybe some of you guys in the audience might know exactly where this photo was taken. But thanks again, Mom, for sending all these over. And just a reminder, there is a new petition out on our commons that I want to focus on. This one focuses on the foreign affairs, more specifically ICE being in Canada. If you want more information on this one, the link will be in the description below as well as the pinned comment. The closure for this petition isn't until June, so we have lots of time. But I highly encourage everyone to really review this one, because now that we know that ICE has 5 buildings across Canada, I don't know about you guys, but it does make me a little bit uneasy. So check out the petition if you would like to sign it. Okay, let's get started with the interview. And I hope you guys enjoyed the update from R. A little bit of backstory on Ron. If you guys are new to my channel, he was the first guy I interviewed, and he was previously based in Arizona. So since then, he's actually made his trip back to Canada, and I'm very happy to say that he's back in Canada now. So thanks for coming back, Ron.
Yeah, or R, as I was referred to for a while. Yeah, I was secretive in my identity. It turns out the First Amendment wasn't really doing much legwork these days, and so I didn't want to be too upfront about things.
Well, but, we're definitely having a different interview this time. So now that you're back on Canadian soil, I guess you feel a little bit more comfortable being on camera as well as stating your name, right?
Yeah, no, it's I crossed the border a few days ago, Monday, and there was something very particular that I've been really getting sentimental and waiting for, which was to hear two very specific words from a very specific set of people. And the words were "welcome home," and the people were the people at Customs, Canadian Customs, and
the CBSA guards, right?
Yeah, and I had 3 of them say it to me, and
that's awesome. Well, I'm very happy you're back in Canada, and you know, because I've been chatting with you ever since our first interview, and I've always been wondering, how are things going, and how has the move gone? Because you've sent me photos of you selling your stuff, and your place looked very empty towards the end. So I guess maybe you can give the audience a bit of an update how your move back to Canada has been.
Well, yeah, so it's been a very exhausting and exhaustive process, but I had the benefit of time on my side because I knew that I was going to be doing this since May. I was able to really kind of do it in a very protracted fashion, and I was able to sell my things and not be a desperate seller. So I ended up making something around the ballpark of like $12,300 on all my belongings sales in the US.
Nice.
And sold pretty much everything. And of course, there was a crunch toward the end. But yeah, and there have been some hangups, some snags getting back here, but nothing major. And it's just so good to be back. It's just, like I was counting down the days for a large number of days.
Nice. And no problems with bringing the cat back as well?
Nope, not at all. No? I got him, nice. I got his rabies vaccine and all up to good. So he was, yeah.
Okay. Well, very happy for you. And, I can definitely tell you're happy to be back in Canada. You did mention before that, you had property down there. Was that the property already sold, or how was it?
It's up for sale now. It's been on the market for a week. And,
okay. So do you still have to go back once there's a sale on it, or?
No. And sorry, my computer is being difficult. 1 second.
No worries. I can actually edit the part out. So.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. Yeah. No, the answer is no. I don't have to go back. All the signatures can be done remotely.
Awesome.
So yeah, all good there. Okay. But I will. The Orange Man has absolutely cost me because the housing market is down. and the currency is down. So it's stacking losses on top of each other.
That's true, yeah. Because I mean, the U.S. dollar has gone down quite a bit within the last couple of months. So
Yeah.
it's not only that, but I guess the property value in Arizona as well is going down, because I know there for a fact there is a lot of snowbirds selling at the moment, right? So
yeah. So it is what it is.
yeah.
It's suboptimal, but here I am.
So has there been, like, since we last did our last interview, has there been anything that happened in your area of Arizona that I guess the audience would probably need to know?
There's a bit of ice activity that's been there. That's been a thing. And I am gratified to know that just shortly after I left, there was a big protest in Tucson in support of, the Minnesota groups. So, that's favorable. I'm happy to see that.
Yeah. That's good. Because I remember last time you mentioned that when I asked the same question, you mentioned there wasn't too much in terms of protests or pushback, I guess, of ICE. So I'm actually glad to hear that. And I think the Minnesota incident, I mean, it hopefully should be a tipping point for the United States and their citizens to realize that they need to stand up, right? But, one of the things I've always said on my channel is that, I use the No Kings protest as an example. I mean, I think I read there was 7 million people that participated across the country, but it's great. And, there is a resistance there. But if you look at the grand scheme of the total population of the United States, which I think is like 340 million, it's a bit of a drop in the bucket, right? So I do hope this momentum continues. So,
yeah, no, the thing is, so I am stridently critical of what has happened in the States, but I want to reserve credit because there are Americans that are standing up. But the problem is that they are grossly outnumbered by Americans who are not. So it's like you could say, like No Kings on October 18th, 7 million Americans were there. That was the single, not Americans, I should correct, 7 million people in America, because I was there and I'm not American, right?
You were protesting as well, right? So
yeah, I was there. So there were 7 million people there. Most of them are obviously the staggering majority of them are going to be Americans, right? But to me, it's like, that's the biggest single day protest in U.S. history. Oh, very impressive, right? No, not really. Because to me, that is merely a glass 2% full version of saying that 334 million people in the United States were not there. And they are not all people that are 4-year-olds and 84-year-olds with dementia and broken hips, It's and it's not like, like there was like 100 million other Americans who I couldn't make it to this, but I've emailed my congressman 3 times and I donated to 5051. It's like, no, it's I genuinely do believe that if I were to not be aware of what was going on, and just so long as I stayed off the internet, if I were to just go about my day-to-day life in Tucson, go to work, go to the grocery store, all that kind of stuff, I probably could go for about a month without even noticing that anything was different.
You just described my friend in Nevada, because I have a friend in Nevada that I met a long time ago, and even up to this day, he's still trying to convince me to come down and play golf with him and stuff like that, right? And I'm like, do you not realize what's going on? He's like, no, what's going on, right? I'm like, and I had to go through the whole thing with him. I said, first of all, your president is trying to take over our country and calling us a 51st state, and his first reaction was, oh, that's still going on. And I'm like, Jesus, and then the second thing I said, well, it's there, we have issues at the border, with CBP and the attitude and stuff like that. And he's like, well, don't worry about it, you'll get through fine, right? And that just kind of made me realize that he's just one U.S. citizen who is a Democratic voter that is so apathetic about things that he really doesn't know what's going on. And I said, do you not know that there's like ICE raids and things like that going on? And so it just kind of made me realize that yes, there is a small resistance, and I do appreciate those people that are against the government, right? But it's a very small group.
And I have been very I've been very verbal in my and vocal in my criticisms, and I've had some Americans that are like that don't agree with what's happening get mad at me Because like, how dare you lump us all together and all that stuff. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, okay, first of all, if you are one of the people that is actually doing something, okay, first of all, thank you. Like, huge, massive thank you. You know, I respect you from now until the end of time, and I hope you'll continue. But the thing is that, like, for every one person that went to No Kings, for example, 48 didn't.
Yeah.
So when I'm acting as if most Americans aren't doing it, I am right. And
Yeah.
you know, like, you can be upset at me for pointing this out, but just know that I'm not talking to you. If you are one of that staggeringly small minority of Americans who are actually doing something, I appreciate you and I respect you. And it's like, why aren't you annoyed the same way I am? It's like,
Yeah.
does it not annoy you that for every one of you and me, because I was there too, 48 other people weren't? What does that mean? That means that people like you and people like me, we have to work way harder to get way less done while taking far more risk, because most of our useless neighbors
Yeah.
are too busy doing absolutely anything but something.
Yeah. And you know what's I bring this up because I don't know which video it was, but I must have triggered a lot of people because I got a whole slew of emails from people, registered Democrats, saying that, you know what, we're fighting, and you know, you have no right to say that you know, there's nothing going on, right? Now, I had a back and forth with somebody, and I actually asked them the same thing. I said, I don't think I'm the one that you should be upset at. It should be the ones that are sitting at
Yeah.
home not doing anything and being completely oblivious, like, you know, your own fellow U.S. citizens, right? So
Yeah.
I think, you know, at the end of that email thread, we kind of, you know, made amends, and
Yeah.
I think she
Like, I'm
understood.
not
But I
mad at
said,
you. I love you for what you're doing.
yeah, yeah,
I
I
think you
love
should
what
be on my side saying to your neighbors and my former neighbors, where are you? Because the
exactly.
fact that you're sitting at home doing nothing means that I have to work harder to get less done while taking more risk for myself, because you couldn't be bothered to lift a finger.
Yeah, and you're not even a U.S. citizen; you're a Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it's that was something that I wanted to really talk to you about, because, you know, when you mentioned in your previous interview, you know, you had you've gone to your friends' kids' first year birthday and things like that, and you know, when you tell them, hey, people that I know have been detained and stuff, and it was just the attitude of when you said that, your friends were like, oh, well, that's sad to hear, right? But
Well,
that made
I
me
don't
kind
consider
of,
them friends anymore, but
yeah, I mean, that, I think a lot of people are starting to realize who their true friends are and who isn't, right? But you know, that situation there kind of made me realize, you know, and I also related to my friend in Nevada too, is that some people really just don't care what's going on. So, and it's unfortunate.
no,
So,
this is real. Like, this is as real as a heart attack. And it's like, I really do feel like I've mentioned to you off camera that I was a student of Jordan Peterson's. And I used to hold him as an absolute hero. It has been quite a few years since I've done that. But in one of the lectures in the class I took from him, he went into study after study after study in psychology, where they were showing normal people either doing horrible things or being willing to sit idly by as horrible things were happening and do nothing. And he would show real life examples of it: Germany, Russia, examples of like people witnessing like what audibly sounded like a rape in public and nobody doing anything about it. And what he did was, like, he just went through an absolute litany of laboratory and real life examples of people either doing or permitting to have done terrible things without lifting a finger.
yeah,
And the end of it was, he kind of said something to the effect of, so what the literature is telling us is that if we, like, as in like this class, were in Germany in the 30s, most of us would have made perfectly fine Nazis. And
yeah,
so hold that for a second. In the early years of his, like, you know, notoriety in, you know, 2016, 17, one of the things he had said, nearly verbatim, was that he has spent the better part of his life studying totalitarianism. In his own words, I know the literature inside out and backwards. And he said that part of the reason that he dedicated so much of his time to this is that he wanted to in a way, inoculate himself such that if circumstances ever presented themselves where he had that tough moral choice, whether to do the right thing or the wrong thing under a creeping authoritarianism, he would do the right thing. He has not done the right thing. Like, this is not the kind of guy that is at all opposed to making psychological diagnoses at a distance. Some clinicians will absolutely do that. They think it's wrong and unethical to for a doctor to diagnose someone that is not a patient of theirs, for example, like a politician. He is not one of those people. Like, how many times has he referred to Justin Trudeau as a malignant narcissist or a wounded narcissist? Yet he will not do that for Donald Trump. And so it's like I've seen him not do the right thing. I have seen this staggering, overwhelming majority of Americans not even try to do the right thing, up to and including people that I know very closely. It's like, you can get something intellectually. You can get that. I understand intellectually that most people would have made perfectly good, either like Nazis themselves or people that just sat there and did nothing. And then they're seeing almost everyone around you, including people you've known for years, do it. And now we go from the theoretical abstract to like real. And it just ripped right through me. It was like, it was just very, very, it's like living in a philosophical thought experiment for real.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the bigger problem. A lot of people are just, they don't want to, they can talk, but they don't want to step up and do it. And
Well, so one thing I was going to say, so I've been a part of a lot of intellectual communities. And one thing that I am thoroughly done with is intellectual communities where their members, especially if they're philosophical and ethics focused, because I've been a part of a few of these. And what I've noticed is it seems like most of the members in there are not doing anything this year and last year. It's just like, how are you going to spend years meeting on a weekly or every 2-week basis and having an online community where you chat about ethics constantly, and then you have this massive high leverage ethical moment that just is going on every day, and you cannot be bothered to lift a single finger? Like, as far as I'm concerned, I'm done with these people. They are just intellectual masturbators. That's all they are. Like, that's it. I am not interested in like intellectually jousting with you and like engaging in intellectual jujitsu. If the second that things get real, you can't be bothered to do anything but think and talk.
Yeah. And what's unfortunate as well is that it happens north of the border as well. I mean, I think if the population in Canada, I think we have a higher population in Canada that actually cares about what's going on, but there is still quite a few Canadians that are just, can't be bothered with what's going on right now. And I mentioned in one of my videos, I can't remember which one is one with, I think it might not be published yet, but I do mention that, I got close friends in Canada that simply really don't care about anything that's going on right now. And, our WhatsApp chats are always about like hockey pools or like whatever else, and, sending memes back and forth. But anytime I try to bring up something about what's going on in, within the globe right now, it's radio silence, right? So for me, I just wish, that's also one of the things that I enjoy talking to you, talking to the people on the Discord server and by email, is that it keeps me connected, right? And having this channel, I hope it, I hope it's creating a community for everybody, so that, those that might feel like their inner circle is, just oblivious to everything going on or don't give a shit, hopefully my channel brings people together. So
and one thing is, I'm a very secular person, but I do find that there's a lot of very interesting wisdom in the Bible that can be looked at from a secular perspective, allegorical. And there was like one quote where like Jesus is said to have said that basically his coming will divide families, friendships, communities, all that stuff. And what was meant was that essentially he represents a different moral existential paradigm. And some people will come with him and some people will not. And people on both sides will be in the same families.
Mm-hmm.
And it will rip right through families. And the allegory here is that sometimes there will be these morally and existentially pivotal moments where important choices need to be made, and people will not make the same choices. And some of those people will be very close friends and or family, and it will put that friendship and that familial bond to one of the most severe tests it will ever face, if not the most severe. And I faced it because I have had friendships be severely harmed by this. And a lot of them, it's by me, because it is very hard for me to, like, when I took those classes, that class from, Peterson, like, one of the things that, like, I kind of said to myself is, under these sorts of circumstances, should they ever present themselves to me, I absolutely will not do nothing. I refuse, because I would hate myself forever. Well, and for those reasons, I haven't. I've been very vocal. But it's very hard to maintain the kind of friendship you had when you are struggling to not have resentment for your own friends, because you're realizing you're doing nothing. You're doing nothing.
I wholeheartedly agree, because I have had emails from people, and the reason why I want to kind of morph my channel into the community building side is because I've had people email me saying that, I can no longer talk to my brother, or I can no longer talk to my sister because of this whole situation that, the world is going through. And, it's, they feel alone, right? And, thankfully, many of my, people that I really depend on are supportive, but there are people within my inner circle that, really just can't give a shit, right? And, I admit, I see them a little bit differently now, and I see them in a way where, okay, well, I thought if push comes to shove, you would, basically do the right thing or stand up for the right things, right? Whereas some of them, like I use my friend in Nevada, I was really close to him, but, I see him completely differently now, right? And I know millions of people, millions of Canadians are also feeling the same way as well, right? So, and it's sad. And
it makes me want to take the blue. Like, I wish this never had to happen. Like, there are certain things about a great many people, I wish I didn't know them.
Yeah.
Because I will never be able to unsee this.
Yeah. Like, I have a friendship from, like, early high school. He's been one of my greatest friends, but he has been somebody that has, well, I don't want to say he's turning into a maple MAGA, but he's just going that direction, right? And it is just somebody that I went to high school with, I went to college with, and we actually had a couple of jobs together, and it just makes me realize that a lot of that may not have, I value the friendship, but I don't value what his values are anymore, right? And I know many people are feeling the same way about those that are close to him, right? So,
and it's hard because it's like, it depends on how highly you value the particular issue. There's all kinds of things I could disagree with somebody, even, and it's not a deal breaker for the friendship, because it's not like something that's pivotal to, like, my fundamental moral worldview. If you're a vegetarian, I'm not going to know. If anything, it's like I might think you're morally superior to me.
Exactly.
I'm not going to not be your friend. And it's not going to, like, if anything, it might create a rift from you towards me, because you're a monster. And I'm like, exactly. Why you think that?
But I think when it comes to, obviously this topic that we're all talking about is our Canadian sovereignty, right? And I think some people just don't value it as much as you and I, and those that are listening right now. So that is something that I've really noticed.
It's that. Absolutely, it's that. But it's like one thing that, like, in the States, like in our first interview, I talked about how, like, unbelievably dispirited I was. Just that this staggering, overwhelming majority of the people around me. I have a term. I call them the staggering, overwhelming majority of Americans, or SOMA. Like, they not only did they not give a shit about Canada, it's just like, now it's like I look back and I'm like, well, of course they didn't care about Canada. They don't even care about America. You know what I mean? Most Americans will not stand up for their own country. It's like now we're seeing more of it, because we just saw to Americans get shot by ICE, and that made it real. It put it close to home, you know. And like, I'm not one for identity politics and whatnot, but a friend of mine who's in American and he's on the left, like, he actually, like, obviously he's not happy that Renee Good got killed, far from it, but in a way it's like he was saying, like, if, how do I say that? I'll say he's like, in a way, he kind of basically said it's good that it was a white woman that got killed versus anybody else, because it's like, that's going to make the people that don't currently care, that we need to care more. Like, if it was a black person or a Mexican person, for example, the people that would have cared the most already care. You know what I mean? This is going to expand the, you know, it's getting into, like, you know, the less tapped market of caring. And he's not wrong, right? He's not wrong.
Yeah, no, he's not wrong. And it's unfortunate that, you know, the Minnesotans had to die in order for some people to wake up. So one thing I wanted to talk to you about, I mean, you know, this is, I have kind of plugged it in my channel before, and unfortunately we weren't able to do that interview, but you referred me to somebody that had a situation, and he was a close colleague of yours. Are you comfortable with talking about that situation?
Yeah, well, it's like, I've actually referred you to two, right? Because there was him, and I won't say his name out of respect for, you know, his, because he hasn't given me clearance to say it. But there was Jay, he is about 5 days away right now. We're recording right now on January 6th. He's about 5 days away from going to Sweden. So he talked to you a few months ago. Yeah, today's February 6th. I'm not sure about he's like 5-ish days away from moving to Sweden, and so you interviewed him a few months ago. And actually, it's funny. Like, I told you about, he and I, before I left Tucson a few weeks ago, he came to my place and we did an interview, and I'm going to be posting that on my channel soon. Where we kind of, like, we're doing like we did basically an exit interview for America. So yeah, but anyhow, to the case that you're talking about, so in our first interview, I mentioned that not too many days in advance of our interview, someone that I knew of, and I'd been in his company one time. He was a physical therapist in Tucson that worked for a rival company, and he got detained by ICE while he was going between. So I worked in home health. I went to people's houses, like, and so did he, as a physical therapist. And he got nabbed by ICE in the homes of patients. And so what ended up happening with him is they detained him, and it was because he immigrated to the States as a refugee at the age of 6 from Laos, well over like more than 45 years ago, about 45 years prior. And when he was 18, about a week or 2 or 3 after he turned 18, he did something significantly wrong. And I didn't know about this at the time when we were interviewing. He had sold LSD, about $140 US worth in the 90s, which is not trivial, to an undercover cop, busted, felony conviction, deportation orders. I didn't know that then. But I think what happened was that Laos, where he was from, was not refused to take back anyone. And so the US essentially said, okay, you can stay, you're on thin ice, you got to report to customs every year. And he did that. And he turned his life around completely. He did his undergraduate, and then he worked as a rehabilitation tech for a few years in like a nursing home or something. And then he went and got his doctorate in physical therapy. And he worked as a physical therapist for like 23 or something years to the day when he got nabbed. He was ICE detention for about 92 days. He got deported to Laos. What I had in mind, and you and I and him were having email conversations, and because you guys were going to do an interview, and the wheels were turning as to making that happen, and you had even plugged in one of your videos saying it's coming. And the idea I had in mind was he and his family create a change.org type petition, directed at the Canadian government, Immigration Canada to consider his application to come to Canada as an immigrant to work as a physical therapist. And the idea being was they get that up. We send it. I shared it to everyone I know. He shares it to everyone he knows. Maybe we get a few hundred signatures on it. Then he does the interview on your channel, right? And your channel had like a little over 100,000 subs at the time, which is for Canada, that's like amazing. And so the hope was that maybe gets it up to a couple thousand signatures, and then maybe we get an interview with Charlie Angus on Midas Canada. And then maybe we had an interview on the Midas main network. That was the vision I had. But he unfortunately backed out. And I recently spoke to a friend of his that I know, and I'm not sure if she knows this authoritatively from him, but at the very least, she speculated that the reason he backed out was because, and I can attest to this, he and his family and close friends worked very, very, very hard to get the deportation from the United States stopped. They spent a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of frustration for months, and it got them absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And I think that probably is why he backed out, because he just didn't want it. What it sounds like to me is they threw everything they had at it and it didn't work, and he's probably just exhausted.
No, I can totally understand that. I mean, everybody's situation, especially being in the detention for 90 plus days, it's, I don't think it's anything that anyone wants to go through again. Right. And especially, giving the exposure, that would put his name out there as well. Right. So I wish him the best, though. I mean, I hope he's doing well in Laos, and,
Yeah, no, I've done some video chats with him out there, and, like he seems like a very positive spirited person. I can certainly tell you he's handling it better than I would.
Yeah.
Tell you that.
I mean, I can't imagine what he was going through. Like 90 plus days is in detention, right? I mean, most of the people that we hear that are, publicly announced on the media are usually only a few weeks to a month, but that's a long time to be in there, especially in those conditions. So, but I do wish him the best. Yeah.
The most recent picture I saw of him before he got detained versus the way he looked when we video chatted, he's lost weight.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Because I heard the food was garbage. I think I talked to one of his sisters or something. She said, yeah, he's not eating well. The food's garbage. And I saw him like, yeah, this guy's lost 30 pounds or 20 pounds or something.
Wow. Well, I wish him the best. Relay the message to him that, if he's ever interested in coming on for a chat or even chatting privately, I'm more than happy to talk to him. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, we're already reaching the half an hour mark, and I kind of want to end this on a happy note. I mean, we've been talking a lot of, it's been a lot of real talk, and I really appreciate you coming back onto my channel, Ron. But now that you're back in Canada, I mean, what are your plans? I mean, you're back in my hometown. You're living literally like 3 blocks away from where I used to live, so I'm very familiar with where you are. And if you need any restaurant recommendations or stuff like that, always reach out to me. But what are your plans now, and how do you feel being back?
It's good to be back. It's very, very good to be back. This is the first time I've not been miserable since March. It's different. So it's good. And like, I am planning on kind of starting up the YouTube channel and because I stopped myself because I'm like, I didn't feel safe doing it down there. Yeah. But at the same time, though, it's almost like it's just nice to not like feel like I'm in a war zone, like a culture war, but still, I really did feel like I was in like enemy territory, and it doesn't mean that every person around me is an enemy.
Yeah,
but at the very least, it seemed like, and not seemed like, it was like, because it was the case that most people around me, there is no limit to what Trump could do to Canada that would not result in them doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah. And that's
because there's apparently because they're not even, if they won't lift a finger for themselves, why would they lift a finger for us?
Yeah. I mean, there will be a small majority that will, but like we've been talking about, it's a drop in the bucket, right? So I think I'm very happy. When you told me you were at the Peace Arch border, I was just like, so relieved that you're back. So, and I got your message because you wanted to do like a video as you were crossing, but I was busy at the time,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But no, I'm very happy that you're back. And like I said, if you need any recommendations in Vancouver or whatever, you're in my old hood, so I know that like the back of my hand.
Yeah.
So if you need
I'm
any
more
help, just let
concerned
me know.
with non wallet crippling groceries. That's my main concern
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, don't go to Save On, don't go to Urban Fare or Choices. I mean, though, unless you need like one thing right away. That's when I only went, but I always went to either like Superstore or No Frills, or just go out a little bit farther. I mean, you have a car, so drive out of the downtown core, and your groceries will probably go down a little bit more. So, but you got to try. There's a poutine place on Davie Street. You got to try out. And then there's also you got to try what's called a Japa dog. It's a hot dog with like Japanese toppings on it. They're all over the place, so you got to try that out. But I'll give you a bunch of other recommendations as well.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Well, Ron, is there, I guess, any last comments for the audience before we end it?
If one thing did you want to talk about the American exceptionalism thing at all?
Yeah, we could. I mean, I think that is a topic that I have, kind of hammered on my channel. And I do hope that the US citizens that follow my channel understand, which I think most of them do. But if there's, if you want to kind of touch on that before we end, I'm totally fine with it.
Well, I'll end off with, how about this? I will end it the same way I ended the conversation I had with Jay, which is the idea of American exceptionalism is essentially that America is unique in the world because its citizenry is not an accident of biological or geographical happenstance. This is a country, America is a country built on values and principles. And when they are lived, they are extremely lofty and truly admirable. And I wish that Americans would live up to it. I wish that American exceptionalism was actually what it was meant to be, and not the case that the American that actually cares enough to try to live and protect these truly admirable values, I wish they were not the exception, because they are.
Yeah. And I think, we've gone through decades of this, and it's always existed, in my opinion. I just think, I've had my head in the sand up until last year when I started the channel and really started understanding things. But I think I'm not the only one that is really starting to see. I mean, there were a lot of people, in my comments saying, I've known this since the 80s or the 70s or whatever else, right?
Oh, yeah.
But it's something that I think is really coming to the spotlight, especially with what's going on since last year. So one of the good things that one of the good things I am seeing about this is that this is just me judging basically, and giving feedback from the comments that I'm reading, but I am starting to notice that people outside of the United States are noticing it more, but also people on the inside of the United States are noticing it more. And I think that movement right there of the people inside the United States noticing, that needs to grow in order for anything else to kind of progress from where we are right now. And that also kind of links up to more people contributing and realizing that, yes, the United States, we might not be the best country in the world, and we have to change, right? So I had a very long email from somebody who, a United States citizen from the South, basically stating, you know what, I realized that, yes, we are no longer the best country in the world. Well, I didn't say, well, I had some reservations on that, right? But for me, it's more about the realization that, it's not the perfect vision that they have foreseen and grew up with and learned from their textbooks, right? So it gives me a bit of hope. And, I think it's going to take some time. And unfortunately, I think it's going to take a lot more unrest for people to really kind of wake up and see what the reality is, right? So, but No, I totally agree on your points as well. And hopefully this 2026, my prediction on 2026, I think it's going to get a little bit worse before it gets any sort of better. So
we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. But no, this has been a great conversation, Ron. And, like I said, I'm very happy for you to be back in Canada. And, hopefully you never have to go to the United States ever again. But, if you ever need any recommendations in Vancouver or anything, you got me to ask, you got the community, you got the Discord server, lots of great people on the Discord server I'm meeting as well. And I know you're very active on it as well. So feel free to reach out to me anytime. And, hopefully one day in the future, when everything kind of settles down and I feel more comfortable being able to, maybe potentially show my identity, we'll definitely have a beer. So
I love it.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks very much, Ron. And you're welcome back on my channel anytime.
I love it. Can't wait.
All right. Yeah, stay on the line. We'll continue.
All right. Elbows up.
Yeah.